Now let's get into Singapore. So you had a
Right.
stint in Singapore, coaching Home United. How did that come about, that opportunity to coach Home United?
Well, firstly, it was 3 years and I loved it. How it came about was I was at Sheffield Wednesday working as youth team coach.
So this is after the Johor stint, right?
This was, I went from Johor, got sacked in Johor. And the reality is you're going to get sacked in coach. You either get sacked or you leave. So it's, better coaches than me have been sacked. So we got sacked. I then went to Vietnam, spent a year there with the SEA Games. We got the SEA Games gold medal with the Vietnamese women's team. I'd gone to coach the men's team. I got transferred to the women's team because they thought we had more chance of winning. And they were right. So we did win. Left the contract finished there. And that was just shook hands, end of contract. It was great. And then I got offered, I got offered Home United. I went to Sheffield Wednesday, stayed there for about a year. And it was okay. It was hard work, working 78 hours a week in the youth team. And I got a phone call from Robert Alberts, who had coached Home United. And I'd met him when I'd been in Johor. And he said, look, Home United are looking for a coach. The other coach has gone. Because what I'll never do, I'll never shaft another coach. I'll never put a knife in another coach's back. Because it's happened to me. And I will never do that. I think you have to. I mean, I've had times when people have approached me, and I said, you've got a coach already. And sometimes it's my mate. So I've rang them and said, look, I've just been approached just to let you know, look, do the right thing by you. So anyway, this one coach had gone. So I went there, and again, we talk about luck. We got like a perfect storm. What I did was I had good administration. They were all highly educated ex-police officers. They knew how to administer. They did everything professionally. The most important thing was I had good players. I walked into a good dressing room. Good players on the pitch and good players off the pitch. My CEO was a fellow called, or they call it manager, David Conceição. He was very much like Ahmed Mohammed. Said, Steve, let me do with the contracts and stuff like that. You sort it out on the pitch, which we did. I mean, an example of how professional they were. We had this incredible salary cap at Home United. And I'll be honest, I wanted to bend it. I won't say break, I'll say bend. And I was thinking of ideas like if I could employ Perez Oliveira's wife as my maid, because that would mean, because I wasn't in the salary cap, but no, Home United, everything had to be absolutely spot on because they were the government team. So okay, we did that. We stuck to the salary cap. I mean, I got a phone call from an agent one day, and he said Dwight York wants to come to Home United. I said, you sure? And the bloke said, oh yeah, Dwight's heard about you. Now I knew that was a pack of lies for a start, because Dwight York had not heard of me. Yeah, so I knew the agent was a liar for the start. And he said, oh yeah. So I said, okay. And I said, well, what does he want? So he told me how much, and what he wanted was the equivalent of my whole team's salary.
Salary, oh dear.
Yeah, of the whole. He wanted the actual. I said, well, as long as Dwight's prepared to go in goal, play centre back and up front at the same time, I can pay him. I said, but otherwise I can't. There's a salary cap. And I tried to explain the salary cap to him, and suddenly Dwight lost interest, which is quite. I tried to sign Baichang Bucha, and I tried to get him a job as a commentator as well. But again, I just could not match the salary Baichang was getting in India. I tried to sign Bambang because from Indonesia, couldn't afford his salary. And to be fair, all the players I dealt with, they were great. They told me the salaries they wanted or they were on. I checked, and they weren't lying. They were truthful players. But I felt that if we didn't have a salary cap, this Home United team could have gone from strength to strength and been an Asian power. We got to the AFC Cup finals, semi-finals, and things like this. We could have gone further if we were able to strengthen the squad. Because in the end, what I decided to do there is I decided to have the 16 best players I could in the salary cap. Then I had 4 young players who were basically NS boys who could just run up and down. All I wanted to do was run, and during the game, I'd make sure that these boys got on the pitch. So they got, once if we were winning 3-0, I'd bang a couple of these boys on so they got extra bonuses, to look after them. But that was the, you had to, and that's part of me as management, looking after your players. If you're stuck on the bench all the time, you don't get, the bonus. If I give you 1 minute, you're going to get the bonus. So you look after him, and he then will repay you in terms of his attitude and effort. But there I was, as I said, I was lucky. I had 2 leaders, almost like CEOs, on the pitch as well, in Subramani and AD Iskander. I never had a single problem in the dressing room. Didn't even need to go in because they sorted it. They solved problems. I'm sure there were problems that went on that I didn't even know about, but they sorted it out. I had a striker, Indra. I mean, Indra nearly got me in trouble. Well, I often got in trouble in Singapore, but Indra was the fastest player I've ever worked with and that's with using electronic light gates. And no one I've been with in English pros anywhere was quicker than Indra. But Indra could not pass the beep test. This stupid, inane test where they said every player had to have a certain standard. Now, I went and I called it stupid, which I still do, and they've since stopped it. I said, it's a racial test. And of course, I got stared at for that. What do you mean? I said, I can tell you now, Sivakumar and Manny will do the beep test all day. In fact, Sivakumar used to run it backwards. He'd do a few of the laps backwards for fun, and he'd still pass the beep test. I said, because the Indian boys have a certain muscle fibers. I said, the Malay boys are the opposite. They've got speed, but endurance is extremely limited. And, they wouldn't accept it. So we had the beep test one day, and what we did was Manny and Sivakumar grabbed hold of Indra's elbows and literally took him through the beep test inside this gym, and he passed it. And the poor some little FAS official said to him, but you can't do that. I said, where does it say you can't be carried? And he looked at me. I said, come on, you're Singapore. And Singaporeans go by the rules. It didn't say you can't be carried through. So we got Indra through. Now, Indra was a national team striker.
Yeah.
And Indra scored goals. Excuse me. He not only scored goals, he scored important goals. He scored match-winning goals, Indra. He's like gold dust. And that would have meant, because of his stupid test, Indra wasn't going to play. But we got through it. I mean, the example of Indra was in my first FA Cup final. We're playing Geylang. I had a sub warming up to take Indra off because he was invisible. I hadn't seen him kick a ball hardly. Next minute, bang, winning goal. One gone goal, one chance, go again. Cup final 2 years later, because we played 3 successive cup finals. 2 years later against Woodlands, I sent one of the young NS boys on called Imran Sahib. And I said to him, you get the ball, all you got to do is look up and give it to Indra. He got the ball. He was shaking like a leaf when he went on. It was a cup final, at the main stadium. He got the ball. He looked up. He whacked it to Indra. Indra took one touch, went round the goalkeeper. Bang! FA Cup final won. Because he had that innate ability. I had other players, local boys like Adil. Now, I think in 3 years, Adil spoke about 5 words to me. He was so shy and quiet. I could not believe he's gone on to be a superb coach. Yeah. And done a fantastic job. And I often joke, in contact with him, I joke and say, look, you never spoke for 5 years. You must have just been sitting there listening. I imagine AD and Manny to go on to be great coaches. But certainly, but Adil has become, in a sense, the best coach there. And you had, luckily again, I had foreigners. And that's where the salary cap came in. I had a really good foreigner called Billy Bone, and a Brazilian lad as well. But the problem was, I could get 3 foreigners for the price of 2 because of the salary cap. Because the salary cap changed, so I had to let Billy go, just sadly, and the Brazilian. But for their salaries, I moved over. I ended up getting Suri Suksomkit and Surachai, plus a Singaporean international. So I got Sasikuma as well. It was, because I had enough money left to get good pros to bolster the squad because of the salary cap. And believe me, Suri Suksomkit, what a player. Oh, he should have gone on. Yeah, I sent him and Indra to Chelsea because we had a deal with Emirates then. And they both came back saying, great reference. They both did well. And they actually Chelsea tried to sign Sutty, and they were going to loan him to Brentford for a year. Brentford went Premier League then. There was Division 2, I think. But just give him, but we couldn't get the work permits and the visas. But it was superb. And I signed another one called Anorak. And of course, where I was lucky was Egmar wasn't a foreigner. He'd been naturalised. And again, good pro. Never a problem. Then you had Perez. Now, Perez, people said, he's trouble. He's a troublemaker. He's this, he's that. He moans. Again, Perez was brilliant. I had some committee man who didn't like me. He said, why do you play Perez? Perez is too slow. I said, if Perez wasn't slow, you'd be watching him on telly in the Premier League. I said, because that's how good he is. I said, but he didn't have pace, but he had a massive amount of ability. And you could say to Perez, I don't want you to defend. I want you just to sit in a certain place. Oh, that's good. I don't like defending. And he did defend. He did. He played in a position, they call it number 10 now, behind a front 2, behind Egmar and Indra. And all they did was we allowed Indra and Egmar would mark 2 of the back 4, and we would allow a centre-back to bring the ball out. And what he'd do is just run into Perez. And Perez would just pinch the ball off him, and we start again. So it was like pressing, but a different way of, they didn't call it pressing in those days. Yeah. But we had a talented team who wanted to learn. I always remember we were 7-0 up in one game and absolutely slaughtering some team, and they got a breakaway. And suddenly I saw 8 of the Home United players, goalkeeper was obviously already back there, sprinting back to get back. And I thought, when you're 7-0 up and you're still sprinting back to stop a goal, that shows like real football character. And that's what we had. I mean, and again, we talk about administration. Everything was going fine. We did the double. We won the FA Cup twice. AFC did really well. Went to Syria, won in places like Lebanon, won in Hong Kong, did lots of good things. The president, I had 2 good presidents, Tan Boon and Lee Hao Seng. Then they changed to a 3rd president who decided he wanted to change everything. He changed the manager, got rid of David. The new manager came in, who decided to tell the players he wasn't going to sign them next year, even though it had nothing to do with him. But he felt it did. He felt he was Alex Ferguson. So I thought, okay, it's time to go. So I knew I was going to go. So that's when I then went to Perak after that. But it was 3 really, really enjoyable years. Used to enjoy going training. We'd all meet together after training. We'd all eat together. Makan sedap, roti canai all the time and things like this, But you had good players combined with good people with quality administration. And I would go back there tomorrow. I mean, Lion City Sailors apparently are the new club.
Yeah.
And I feel sad that I was told that it's almost like Home United have been airbrushed out of history.
Yeah.
Which is a pity because they did fantastic. That team did great things for the nation. And others, and there were other good teams. Tampines were a good side. Geylang were a good side, Yeah. So the S League was very, very competitive in that period, when it first started. I think the decline came again with money. Then you started getting lesser foreigners, not good. You started getting cheap imports, and with you basically pay for what you get, So I have no regrets about Home United, other than that it didn't end well because, again, of change of administration. But in terms of, I'm delighted to see so many of the players have gone on into coaching or management or some other areas. I mean, we had a player called Fahmi Abdullah. Again, so much talent, could do frightening things. Wasn't the best timekeeper, so I gave him an award. I bought him a $1 alarm clock. It was never late again, because I think you have to learn how to handle people. Shouting at Fahmi Abdullah would have been an absolute waste of time, because everybody shouted at Fahmi Abdullah. But by doing this, it became punctual, and he's actually gone on to be a physical trainer, which is a miracle. But he's doing really well. But we had so many good players around that time, and they've all kept on contributing. I see where Manny and Adi have coached national teams, Adil, etc. Lionel Lewis, good goalkeeper. The only thing that frustrated me at times was the NS. NS was frustrating, because I felt if you're playing for your country, that should be
serving
NS.
the nation.
Yeah. And the occasional journalist, shall we say. I had quite a few run-ins with journalists. I used to hate when I saw my players being criticised. I invited 2 to come training. Now, one did come training. I can't remember his name, but he came training and he nearly died after about 30 minutes. And he suddenly realised this is a different world. Then I had another one who wouldn't come training. Then I had another one who told lies about me. And he eventually got put in jail for match fixing. When that match fixing incident occurred with the Lebanese referees, he was behind that. So the guy who was writing lies about me ended up doing that. So, I just think that Singapore at the moment, I say, is not fulfilling its potential. The key to me, sitting as an outsider now, is that there's not enough being done to get the Chinese and Indian boys playing. It's a Malay-based game, it would seem now, which is great, but there's got to be such a small population anyway. Why reduce your talent pool by eliminating almost Chinese? I only have had one Chinese boy in 3 years at home United, which is madness. I only had, I think, 2 Indian boys. Madness. There's got to be more players of that descent who can play football, and you've got to increase the playing size, not by bringing in foreigners, but by producing your own players. Get them to play on void decks. Don't have to be wonderful examples of coaching. Get the kids to play in the streets again. That's where the best players came from. That's where Adi and Manny came from there. Deal, these types of Indra, they played on the streets. That's where they come from.
Yeah, true. And going back to life in Singapore, what were some of the differences between life in Malaysia and Singapore?
Well, everything is
similar. Both countries are pretty similar.
Yeah, similar. Well, Kelantan's a different planet.
Kelantan's completely different.
Basically, I would say Singapore was organised. Everything was meticulously, or at times frustratingly so, because, like, for example, the salary cap. I couldn't cheat, so because they wouldn't do it. And okay, you have to accept that. But the other big difference, of course, is cost. I recently went through Singapore stopover, and I'd had to have taken a mortgage out to buy a bottle of wine. The cost of, I used to be able to go from A to B in Singapore in about $10 in a taxi. Now I'd have to take a rubber bank. Yeah, so the cost is the biggest difference. But in terms of, I enjoyed life in both. Between, you had a little bit of chaos in Malaysia, but happy chaos. Singapore, you had happy organisation. But the frustration, as I said, basically was sometimes the administration, like Kyril Amri. I tried to sign Kyril Amri at 16 and play him in the first team. FAS wouldn't let me. He's too young to play in the S League. I mean, how ridiculous. He's either good enough or he's not good enough. It's not his age, so those ridiculous rules he'd have about age, or the ridiculous beep test and things like this. There was some good, there was an administrator who was excellent. Oh, his name's gone. It's gone. He was a great one. He used to come to me and say, Steve, I understand what you're saying. He said, but we're stuck with rules. This is the way we are. We go through rules here. It's annoying me that he was a great player and he became administrator. Then he quit. He's no longer involved. But you had other good ones like P. Sivakuma, who understood football. He knew what was happening in football, and he did. He did things well. He didn't try and copy American ideas like East Singapore against West Singapore, all-star games. I mean, absolute rubbish that was. I had Perez come to me, coach, they want me to play for West Singapore. I said, great, no problems. Who's going to insure you? What do you mean, coach? I said, well, if you do your ACL and you're not playing for us, who's going to pay for your ACL injury or your broken leg? Oh no, I think my hamstring's gone bad, coach. So because they wanted to bring this Americanization in. You don't need Americanization. You just need football. The Singapore fan is a football fan, same as in Malaysia. Again, what I found very impressive with Singapore was that the money from Singapore pools was getting pumped back into the game. I made I'll say a cultural mistake when I was in Perak. Someone asked me about how do we get more money in the game. I said, well, there's illegal bookmaking going on all over Malaysia. We all know it. Everyone knows it.
Yes.
That money is going out of the game. It's not coming back into. I said, why don't we legalize betting, have it like a lottery? Money goes back into football, money goes back into orphanages, goes into hospitals for kids, whatever. Oh, did I get some abuse? But gambling being haram. I said, I didn't say Malays had to gamble. I said, let the Indians and the Chinese gamble. I mean, because it's going on. We know that. I said, but what's happening is that the gambling money anyway is going out of the game. But no, there was a block of people who just said, that was you're Masala, you don't understand us. This is haram. And I said, okay, I'm just trying to help football, help orphans, help kids in hospitals. I said, simple as that. I said, at the moment, you've got money going away. But again, Singapore pools was a good example I used to use of how money is being well spent going back.
And which were some of the toughest grounds you played in Singapore?
Oh, in Singapore, I actually liked Jurong because there was no running track. Yeah, I mean, running tracks are horrible. You've got to be honest. It kills the game. It's far better to have, Jalan Besar before plastic was great, because you had the right up against you. And I think any ground that hasn't got a running track is good. Any ground that has got a running track is shocking. And another example, for example, difference in Singapore and Malaysia. In Singapore, I had a groundsman at Bishan, and he treated the pitch like it was his own back garden. I never saw another groundsman in Malaysia where the pitches were terrible compared to Bishan. I mean, it was Bishan. It was a pleasure. It used to, drive me mad. You can't play today. There was possible weather 7 days ahead. I used to train. I changed training as well in Singapore to the morning because the couple of reasons. It rained every day in the afternoon, and I thought, well, why should we rain in the afternoon where there could be lightning? Why don't we train in the morning when it's sunny and dry? We used to train early, and then it meant as well that a lot of them were family lads. They could spend time with their family. It also had the added benefit that to get up early, you usually have to go to bed early, but that was indirect. But it was basically, it meant that players could then come to training, do the job, mix together socially, which was important, I think, for a team, then go home and do what you had to do for your family. And also, if it did rain in the morning, we could have trained in the afternoon. But if it rained in the afternoon, you'd lost the day. I didn't like losing training days. So that was something, again, culturally, I had to try and change. That one, I won. I didn't win the betting in Malaysia, but I won early morning training.
And this one, I got to put you on the spot. Malaysian food versus Singaporean food. Which one was tasted better?
Oh, Malaysian.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
100%.
Although I have great trouble eating with my right hand. I could not do that. I just kept falling everywhere. Yeah. I had to ask for, I just could not do it. It just kept dropping it. But I did prefer Malaysian food. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Basically roti canai. Yeah.
Roti canai, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Agreed. But in Singapore, okay, I think you've mentioned quite a number of players, but besides those that you've mentioned, any other players that you felt, were really talented that you
Well,
coached?
there was some good players you played against, like Tawan and Zico, who was there. The Thai boys. Most of the Thai boys that came over were great players. They were really quality internationals. I mean, I think in the region, the Thais are the best footballers, without a doubt, because they combine skill with being as hard as nails. There's no soft Thai players I've come across. But they were the best sort of players. The Home United lads, they never ever let me down as a coach, and that to me was really important. Even I had a couple of lads on the bench sometimes, like Mohammed Madani, a great person on the bench. He came in, did his job, went out, sat on the bench, encouraged. You had good people, and that's so important in football. I've listened to people like Marino, Klopp, Ferguson. They say the same thing. You've got to have, if you've got a cancer in the dressing room, you've got to cut him out and get rid. No matter how good he is, you've got to get rid of the cancer. And that's where I was lucky in many ways. Very, very rarely did I have bad people.
All right, so let's move on from your time in Singapore to your time in what was called Indochina previously, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos. What were the differences coaching in these three countries?
Well, I was walking along what they call the Corniche in Beirut with Perak team. We're having a walk along the front, and I got a phone call. Hey lad, do you want to come and work with me in Thailand? I've just been appointed national coach. I want you to do coaching for me. And I thought it was one of my mates taking the mickey out of me, and I knew I was leaving Perak anyway. As I told you, the MB didn't fancy me. Though to conclude that Perak tale, we went to play in Lebanon in the AFC game, last game of the season. We had no money. I ended up getting the money off the AFC. I took 14 players, that's all. So I had 3 subs, a spare goalkeeper, 14 players. I took 3 staff, that's all we had. I eliminated everybody else. Got to the airport, and there was 7 committee men from the new PAS committee going business class. And then when they got there, they went straight to Damascus, didn't bother. They went shopping here, shopping there, shopping everywhere. We saw them again at the airport on the way back. So that type of thing made me. So anyway, I was in Lebanon, got a phone call. Do you want to come to Thailand? Well, of course, I mean, to work with the Thai national team was great. And second, I like Thai players. And it was Peter Reid who took me there. And he said to me, I heard you're fluent in Thai. And I looked at him and said, well, no, I've got about 3 words, like Sooty Suksum kids, I said, but don't worry about that. I said, I know the best players. And I looked at the list of the players Peter had been given by the committee. I said, no, these are not the best players. We give them a call. And we called in people like Sooty and Surachai and stuff like that. And Tawan and Skiatasuk and, got a big goalkeeper in. And we said, and we realised then that was the bonus. But it was a pleasure working, with Peter Reid and then Brian Robson, but also the Thai players. They were genuinely, sincerely good footballers, but want to play for their country. Like there was no naturalised Thais then. Now it's changing again. And I'll be honest, I was trying to be part of that. I tried to bring some in from Switzerland, but I had to fight. And I lost that battle in those days. But certainly now, it's not only a few. It's not many in the Thai team. But they were a delight to work with the Thai lads. Language was a problem because unlike the Singaporeans and the Malaysians, you could get through with English. Here it was difficult. There was not many English speakers, just all through the country as well. So we had to rely on a translator. We had a good translator, a lad called X, who was educated at private school in England. So he was, I mean, there was one day Peter Reid was speaking, and in the first few weeks with Peter, I had to translate his Scouse accent into English for the translator because he couldn't understand him. Because Peter's saying, and I want you to do this, and I want you to do that. And the translator leant over and whispered to me, who is this fella Hughes? We haven't got anyone called Hughes playing. So I had to explain to him what it meant. He said, But, I mean, you do learn as well when you're a foreigner coaching, you've got to, what language you've got to use. When I was in Vietnam, again, this was 2001, no English. So I had 4 or 5 translators, all rubbish. I had one who kept saying yes, yes. And I said, are you an elephant? And she went, yes. Got rid of her. I had another one who was taking notes. And I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm going home tonight, translate it. I said, no, it's got to be translated on the spot. Yeah. So anyway, I ended up getting a girl who knew nothing about football, but she was brilliant. She was politically clever. So she stopped me making cultural mistakes, which could be dangerous in Vietnam. And she was brilliant. When I was angry, she got angry. If I made a joke, she made a joke. There was one day I'm saying, I've used this word loosely. I said, tell him to hit it to the far post. Next minute, the ball's pinging to the corner flag. I said, what are you doing? She said, you told me to hit it to the furthest stick. That is the furthest stick over there. I said, no, the far post is that back of the goal. And then one day we were under pressure and I said, tell him to, I'll say flipping. She said, tell him to flipping welly it. It wasn't quite that word. And next minute, she's silent and she's on her little electronic dictionary. And I said, what are you doing? She said, I know what the word flipping means. In fact, I quite like it. She said, but what is this welly? I don't understand this bird welly. Because in English, you welly, it can get a long way. So I had to learn to change my language. I mean, and that's again, where you talk about the 3 different nations, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos. You have to, and they are different, even though they were all Indochina. And you have to pick the brains of people. I had in Kelantan, there's a beautiful lady called Mazita who used to give me lessons on what to say to whom, when to say it, what not to say, which is probably the most important thing. And she educated me in many ways. And I had this with my translator in Vietnam. One day a big black car turned up. Lads jumped out in white shirts, black ties. And I looked at them and they said, the Minister of Sport wanted to see me. So, and I went, oh, come on, we're busy, we're training. She said, no, you don't do that here. The Minister of Sport wants to see you, you go. We went in. He said, you're no longer the men's coach, you're the women's coach now, because we think you will win with the women because you're going to. And they were right, because they wouldn't have won the SEA Games then. It would have been, but we only had to win one game, which was to beat Myanmar for the women's. So we did that and we won. And she was kicking me under the table. That was him. Whenever I had said the wrong thing, bang, I get kick on my shin. So you do learn how to adapt to certain things. Sometimes you're not right. That's the first thing you got to remember. Sometimes you are right, but you're not going to win, no matter what. Sounds a silly example. A lot of the Vietnamese girls were playing, and their bra straps were snapping when they were playing, and they have to come off and change. I said, why haven't they got sports bras? Oh, we haven't got them. So I went and bought some for all the players to wear sports bras. Next minute, the same thing's happening. I said, why aren't they? She said, oh, they're wearing them, but they put them on top of the bra because that was culturally, it was wrong not to be seen like that. And I wasn't going to win. I just knew that I wasn't going to win. There were certain things that a male was never going to win over a female. But if you want to talk about toughness, they were some of the toughest players I had, the Vietnamese women. We used to play the men's under 23s. The men would play one touch, we'd play free. and they were great games, really good games, because it's quite difficult to play one touch if because there was a free kick for us if they played more than one touch, or we play over 35 men because that's where the power element got reduced. And one day we played the British Embassy staff team, and there was this stupid colonial idiot went around kicking the girls. So I said to him, I leant over, I said, mate, don't do that. I said, and he was rah, private British schoolboy. He said, they've got to learn. They're going to be tough. They're going to play men. They've got to learn. I said, mate, that's not the reason. Just don't do it. He went and fouled someone again. 10 minutes later, off he's come, stitches all down his shin. The captain just gone right over the top, sailed into him and smashed his leg. And I said, mate, that's what I meant. I said, these players don't mess about. Because I once said to the translator, hey, tell them to work harder. Come on, option B is the rice field. And she looked at me and said, that's the truth. If they're not here, it's the rice field for some of them. And they actually took me to a rice field and showed me how hard it is to work in one. Don't go. Believe me, it's the hardest job in the world. And then we used to stay in a sports centre. And I said, can we get better things for the girls? And she said, look, these girls think it's wonderful. They've got an ensuite shower, they've got a television, they've got AC. They don't get that when they're in the village, if they're not from the main part of Hanoi. I said, this is paradise. So you learn, okay, what was happening here was good. So you had to accept that it was the best there could be. And again, it all comes down to money, But more and more, Lao, for example, Lao is doing fantastic things now. They have a good president, Vipet. They had a girl called Kyo who's now gone to the AFC, and they invested all the AFC and FIFA money properly. The facilities in Lao are fantastic. That was I had about a year there, and that was great. We played against Korea. That was, I say Korea. We played against Son Heung-min. He scored 3 and made 2. We got beat 5-0. He was a fantastic footballer. But they were literally, all we tried to do at Lao was bridge the gap. You're not going to jump from where you are with Lao or Singapore up to Korea to Japan, but if you can make the gap smaller, and to be fair, I think Lao have done that as well. We moved up to our highest FIFA position, and that's where I think Thailand and Vietnam should be doing. They should be in the next layer, going upwards now. I'll say second layer rather than third tier. And Indonesia, if they got organised, which they seem to be now, getting better organised, the talent in Indonesia, there's 200 million people. How can Singapore compete? With, is it 3 million there, Singapore?
Yeah,
3 million over 200. Yeah, 6 then. There's 250 million or something in Indonesia. How can you compete? There's 85 million in Vietnam. Same in Thailand. You're going to have a bigger playing pool. So, but the quality, if you could have Singapore's administration at times, an organization with Indonesia, that could be a huge force, Indonesia. And I think there will be in 10 years, there'll be a major force.
And going back to your time with Thailand, I don't remember it to be a very successful period for Thai football.
We got beat in the Suzuki Cup final by Vietnam. You talk. When I give lectures on coaching, sometimes I talk about what you need to have as a coach. This, but there is something called luck, good and bad. Luck was for me when we played against the police in Malaysia. They hit the post, came out, we scored. I had good luck. We played Vietnam in the Suzuki first leg, and we got a goal disallowed for offside. We saw later it wasn't. There's no VAR, obviously. It was a Brunei linesman. We saw the fact he was onside by television by a long way, but that cost us from winning 3-1 to 2-1. That type of thing. In SEA Games, we were beating Malaysia 1-0, and suddenly, we were beating Vietnam 1-0, and then penalty. and no one appealed. Neither side. We didn't know what to say. The other side of it, Vietnamese didn't appeal for it. Referee decided it was a penalty, and I found out later when I went to India that referee was famous for, I'll say, flexible decisions, shall we say?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's where part of it comes in. But yet we didn't. We played Iran, got beat 1-0. Drew with Iran as well. We played Jordan, beat Jordan. So we were competitive, but we used to win things like the King's Cup and stuff like that. But we got to got the Suzuki final. SEA Games, I felt we were robbed by referee, but every coach would say that. But that's what I felt we were at that time. But I wouldn't have swapped anything for Thailand. It was a great experience because of the quality of the players. And the president there was a good president, Warui Makudi. He never interfered. People just say, "Oh, he's going to interfere." He didn't. He never asked Peter Reid or Brian Robson who to pick, and he put as much money as he could find into the game. I mean, you look at, say, Zico was coach there for a while, Ketasuk, doing a fantastic job, and then the new president got rid of him. Yeah, apparently because he was too popular. Now, how stupid is that? The players worship Zico. The fans loved him, but he wasn't over there. You'll see Thailand that the presidents become the stars. Then you have match day promotion. You'll have the chairman of the club on the poster, not the centre forward. But Buriram, example, Buriram is a one-man show by the president knowing, but to be fair to him, he's done like JDT. He has put money where his mouth is, and he basically has built stadiums, training grounds. So Buriram have a chance of becoming like a JDT, I think. But there's other teams as well. There's enough money in Thailand for other teams to catch Buriram. Bangkok Blast is well run. Thailand Port is a good side. So I think Thailand has got the best potential in the region. There's Vietnam has ability, but there's corruption. At the V-League is not. You can never be sure of a V-League result. And there's also a lot of players being signed from agents who are giving money back to people in the system. And of course you can't prove it because you can't. But it's happening. The players tell you that some of the people who are taking the money tell you. I, for example, was approached by a club in Hanoi. The president, via the translator, said to me, I said, look, who's going to pick the team? And the president said, oh, he did, not me. So I said, well, if we lose 3 games in a row, who gets sacked, you or me? And he said, you do. And he was honest, but I thought, well, I can't work like that. So I didn't take the job. And he was like shocked. He said, we'll pay you this. I said, well, you pay me a 3-year contract, and if you sack me, you pay me out. Oh, no, we won't pay you out. We'll just pay you what you've worked. And I'm going, well, it doesn't work like that. So I didn't work in a Vietnamese club, but examples like that. Whereas Singapore, to be fair, was spotlessly scrupulous with the money at Home United. Malaysia, I had to fight for my money in both Kelantan and Perak near the end. And you learn as a foreigner, you don't leave the country. Because you leave the country, you get forgotten about. So it's important, and you do things It's also important to behave properly yourself, to sign contracts yourself properly. Don't have under-the-table contracts, because you can't prove them anyway. So you do it properly. I was in Singapore, everything was above the table. I got paid every single penny I was due in Singapore. No complaints whatsoever.
And just finally on this region, the Vietnamese women team. Okay, what was women football like in those days when you took over the Vietnamese women team?
They were by far the best in the region because they were treated as professionals. They literally they came in for the year, and again I had to stop them training too much because the mentality was, oh, you're professional now, you've got to train twice a day. And what they've done is they brought in a Chinese coach before me, and he was making injured players do laps to run off the injury, and he ended up with 7 or 8 players on the bench injured all the time. So when I came in, I reduced the training again, played a lot more football, did a lot more rest and recovery, massages, ice baths. And suddenly the injury, you're always going to get injuries. You're always going to get kicks. You can't stop that. Excuse me. But we reduced them. We reduced the non-impact injuries we reduced. And we treated them well, and they reacted well. And talk about national pride. When they sang the national anthem, they meant it. They were extremely nationalistic and proud about their nation. So it was a pleasure working with them. It really was. And again, a lot of them have gone on to do good things in coaching and administration. The Vietnamese do that quite well. They've encouraged the females to stay involved, and they're getting better and better. I mean, the female game now is hugely improved. I coached in 1990 the Australian, they call them the Matildas now.
Nice.
Different world now. They're athletically better. They're technically better. Very few of my players could kick a ball 60 meters. Now they can ping it 60 meters across. There's a couple of millionaires in the Matildas. Sam Kerr's playing for Chelsea and things like this. And there's some really, really top-class female players. A mate of mine who played pro in England for a number of teams, he coached Marta, the Brazilian, in America. And he said, look, Marta is a far better footballer than he ever was. He said she could have played easily English lower league football, easily, on technical ability, And you're seeing that now. The women's game is taking huge strides forward, and in England as well. I mean, the English Lionesses are culturally smashing everything. It's great. The money coming into them. They're full-time professionals. They're getting crowds of 60,000 at the Emirates for Arsenal games. Wembley is full. So, I think certainly that is a huge area where Southeast Asian football can improve. If they encourage females to play, then there's a massive chance, to improve the game, because her dollar is good as his dollar. So if you can get more people involved in the game, more women will come and watch games. Maybe they'll come and watch the S League then, and then the S League will get bigger. So it's common sense to encourage everybody to play football, different races, different religions, different genders.
Yeah, true. All right, now going to India. So India, we know, is a country where football is not the number one sport. What was that like, coaching in a country like that?
Well, you're certainly right. It's not. Cricket's God, absolutely. And Sachin Tendulkar is beyond God. He was absolutely worshipped. But
cricket and cinema is God in India.
I had 4 different spells in India. Mumbai in the ISL, which was fantastic. Then another season as a commentator for ESPN Star. I then did a spell with Manipur in the high up mountains, which was really good. That was like a professional education session, a couple of months up there. And I had a horrible spell in Mohanbagan, Calcutta. Oh, I saw the worst side of football there. I mean, I realize now in hindsight, I shouldn't have taken it, in a sense, because I was told to get 3 months up front, get paid 3 months up ahead. And I see now why I did. I realized half the committee didn't want me. They wanted a local who they could have manipulated. The other half of the committee wanted me because I couldn't be corrupted. I was, so it was, and I saw that the worst of the caste system. It was just terrible. I mean, I had a kit man, a boot man, used to clean the boots of the players. So end of the month, my first month there, I gave him a tip, because that's what you do in England. You tip the boot man. And next minute, there's a high caste person come run down to me. What are you doing giving him money? I said, it's my money. I'd give it to who I want to. He said, do you know how much you give him? I said, yeah, I gave. He said, you've just given him a month's wage as a tip. He said, he'll want that all the time now. I said, well, good, he deserves it. But that mentality was, no, he's lower caste. He cannot do that. Went to Mumbai, different world. It wasn't run like that. Mumbai was ran as a business, and it was very, very good. The owner was Ranbir Kapoor, the movie star.
Yeah.
No, of course, I'd never heard of it. I'd heard of Shah Rukh Khan, but I'd not heard of Ranbir Kapoor. So I ended up dancing on a stage with Ranbir Kapoor one night, which to Indian people I've met is wow, But so it was well run. Everything was done properly there. But the only difference was you knew when you went in that the players were chosen by the president. The players, but you chose the team from the squad, and you knew that, so there wasn't a problem with that. But we got a player there, and next up we got a phone call from the president. I've just brought you a new player. Who's that? Nicholas Anelka.
Oh.
And was my reaction. Oh, he'd just been banned in England for making a sign on his arms or something, and we thought, oh no. This proved to me that you should never believe everything you read in the press. Because Nick Anelka turned out to be the most humble, the most professional, hard-working player, and actually probably the best player I've ever worked with. He was magnificent. He was built he was 35 at the time, still the fastest player, no body fat, all muscle, and a genuinely good character. So that proved to me there was wrong. I had another player there who I said, I looked at him, I thought, I don't know him. He played Bundesliga, so you had to be good, I thought. I Googled him. Up came a picture of him marking Ronaldo. He was playing for Dortmund against Real Madrid. And I thought, well, I think you might be good enough for here. And funny enough, we never saw him tackle. Didn't have to. He just stepped in front, took the ball and passed it. Never lost a header. But, he was just Manuel Friedrich. He played. He actually roomed with Jurgen Klopp, he told me later, when they were younger players, So when he was a young player and Jurgen was on the way out, but he was an example. So we had, and people like Robert Pires was there, Del Piero. The league was good. Perez was excellent. You could just see that he wasn't there to cheat. He lasted 60 minutes every game and he'd come off because he couldn't give you any more than that. But the 60 you got was quality, same as Del Piero. Zico was there. The other Zico was there, not Taiwan. The Brazilian Zico was coaching there. Yeah. Lucio, the centre back, was there. Materazzi, the big Italian centre back. Yeah. They brought in that year some great players. So it was really good to be involved in that league. Manipur, they took me there and said, look, here's 30 players, teach them to be professional. And that's what we had to do. We spent the day working on them on the pitch, and we'd have afternoon sessions off the pitch about lifestyle, about food and things like this. And happily, a lot of them went on to become pros in the ISL. Now, the northeast of India is an absolute hotbed of football. There's very little cricket there. But they have the real football. It's a football goldmine. The females as well. Most of the national team come from the Manipur, Sikkim region, all those northern eastern states. But people say to me, what's India like? I said, well, I don't know. I said, it's 22 different countries. I said, Mumbai is not Calcutta. Calcutta is not Manipur. I said, Goa is different to everywhere else. And I suddenly realized that, it was such a fascinating place. The languages, the food, the love of cricket. I love cricket, so I was happy. Cricket. It was just a unique experience. The only thing I didn't like, again, was the caste system and the element of corruption that was to an extent in certain clubs. But in the ISL, that seems to have solved it a lot. The ISL has turned the league far more professional now.
Okay, that's nice. I'm sure you've met a lot of famous people in India, which you probably would have no inkling on who they are.
Yeah, Ranbir Kapoor, like I said, never. We're at this place, Mumbai Racecourse, which was apparently a big place. Next minute, he grabs hold of me, pulls me to the dance floor. And I'm going, what's going on? I don't dance with blokes. That's, again, culturally different. You just don't dance with a bloke. But I looked around, all the players were up dancing, except the foreigners. The foreigners were sitting there absolutely fraught with fear, well, I don't want to stand to another man, but that's the way it was. And then we met one night, we were out, and Peter Reid loves his cricket as well. He said, I'd like to meet Sachin. Yeah, no problem. So we had to go downstairs to this room, and there was a cordoned off area and with bodyguards, because you couldn't get through to Sachin unless you had approval. And I understand why, because he was like, worshipped the man. Everything was good, like Shahrukh Khan. We met him, and I met John Abrams,
John Abraham,
big lad. Yeah. Oh, big lad. I wouldn't argue with him. But I used to enjoy going to the cinema, because the Bollywood films are out of this world. You're sitting there, how are they going to get a dance into this? But somehow they always get a dance in. And I really enjoyed it. It was a fascinating place to my time there. I would recommend anybody to go there, to India. But don't think you're going to change it. No one's going to change India. No. So, but I was treated well, other than the Calcutta sign. I mean, the example was, I got met at the airport in Calcutta. That's nice. They took me through all the customs dead quick, great. Went into the apartment. He opens the fridge, this bloke, and says, "Oh, I've got you some orange juice, milk, biscuits." I said, "Oh, thank you. He said, "Can you give me the money for them?" I said, "Okay," because I thought, fair enough, So I had no idea of rupees then. So I pulled up my wallet. I said, "Look, to take what you think's right."
Yeah.
I think he bought the biscuit factory the next day. He absolutely ripped me off. And then you obviously know what pujas are, the ceremonies, the pujas. Puja. I kept getting invited to open pujas. So I would go there, I'd shake hands, I'd sign autographs, do the pujas business. And then one of my players said, "Oh, you must be making a fortune, coach, all these pujas." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You go into all these pujas, how much are they paying you?" I said, "Nothing, I'm doing it because it's my job." The bloke who was organising it was getting paid and keeping the money. So that's what it was. It was non-stop like that, So, and I had a player there who was on an absolutely ridiculous wage, almost like English wages they were on, But I suddenly realised that a lot of this money was going back via his agent to other people, So that was going on. I had a squad of about 30, and I said, "Look, it's too many." I said, "It's like Chelsea now." I said, "There's 5 lads there." I said, "There's 5 lads." So I gave them the names. I said, "They're lovely lads. They work hard, but they shouldn't be playing football. They're not professional footballers." I got told they're cousins of the sponsors, committee man's nephew. And then it was put even more simply: if you don't pay him, if he doesn't keep his job, he doesn't get his salary, can't feed his family. So I said, "Okay, I mean, I'm not going to ruin a lad's life because of that." We kept them on, but it was certainly a huge difference, and again, if we talk about culture, I learned don't eat street food. I made a mistake of thinking I was toughened up by Southeast Asia. Indian street food had a certain effect on you. I discovered what Delhi belly was. And I've never lost so much weight in so few time.
Did you pick up the language while you were in India?
No, all spoke fluent English.
Okay.
In fact, some of the English is better than mine. Yeah. The hardest part, Vietnam and Thailand, the most difficult. Also, Thailand, it was hard to learn the language because I can't read it. But Bahasa was okay because it's quite simple to read and to learn, and it's quite simple grammar. Kanak, children, Kanak. So it was quite simple that way in terms of your grammar. Singapore didn't need it. Everybody spoke good English, So except they say "la" at the end.
Yes.
I once got interviewed by a journalist who stuck his microphone under me and said, "Woodlands la," and that was it. I said, "What do you want me to say?" "Woodlands la." So I found the best journalists in Singapore were the Chinese females, because they did their homework and did their research and asked intelligent questions. Some of the others were a bit scary, and had opinions on footballers that were totally ridiculous. They would say, this player's not fit. And they would literally abuse some of your players. And I'm going, you can't say that. I can prove they are fit. Come and do it now. And I brought this chap in to play, and he nearly died. But it was almost like if they didn't like you as a person in Singapore, and to an extent, the Malaysian papers, the Harian Metro, if they didn't like you, it became personal. Or if you didn't bow down to them, Same in India. I had a daily press conference at Mohammedan. And one day, one rule I do have is I never criticize players in public, ever. Privately, I'll speak to them. Dressing room, I'll speak to them. And I'll hammer them. But not publicly, ever. Next minute, one of my players, Sunil Chetri, says to me, Coach, you just said this in the paper. He's laughing. I said, what do you mean? He said, I know you haven't said it, Coach. I know you wouldn't do that. So I rang the editor, and he said, oh, don't bother, Coach. I said, what? So I rang the editor. Editor said, oh, yeah, he didn't go to your press conference, but he had to have a story, otherwise he wouldn't have got paid. So he made it up.
Oh.
And I'm going, you can't do that. And then again, I was the stupid one. Why not? So you have to learn to respect the good journos and avoid upsetting the bad journos.
And now finally, your time as a pundit, how did that come about?
I did a fair bit in Malaysia, lots of different outlets in Malaysia, Genting Highlands, Channel 7, Channel 10, just lots of different things. And when I came to Singapore, John Dykes rang me and said, look, I've seen you on Malaysian television. Do you want to come and do a bit? I said, yeah, of course, and loved it. And very, very professional ESPN. Andy Tate was a producer. John Dykes, super. I mean, people don't realize how hard it is to do his job. I was on one night, and basically what happens usually is John will ask Pundit A question, because you know the question anyway, because you're well researched. Then you'll ask number B, then you go back to A, all that. One day, I suddenly was asked question A, then I was asked question B. And I looked at the corner of my eye, the other pundit had fell asleep, because it was one of the late night sessions. And John Dykes got me out of it. He rescued me because I was struggling big time, because I didn't know the question. But he rescued me, and you realise how hard it is. I did a few times later in Malaysia, where you're the main person with the earpiece in, when you've got people speaking in your ear, and you've got to speak to the other person there. Not easy. In fact, in one time in Malaysia, I ended up answering on air the bloke in my ear, because I just got confused. But that was, but you had some really good fellow called John Beresford, Paul Walsh.
Yes.
Not mega stars in terms of football, but did their homework. Jerry Armstrong, all knew that, did their research and did their work there. I mean, that's the key. Do your homework, do your research. Paul Macefield does his homework, does his research. He stayed in punditry for a long time. Shebby Singh was always good. Shebby took the view that you had to have an opinion. Didn't have to agree with him, but he had an opinion. Shebby did. Sadly passed away. But he was very good. I mean, I was on one night with Brian Robson, and he said something, and I didn't think he was right. But end of the session, the producer comes up to me and says, "You didn't think Robbo was right there, did you?" I said, "No, I didn't." He said, "Well, why didn't you say?" I said, "Well, Tranmere Rovers youth team, as opposed to 91 caps for England and 600 games for Man United, I think I know who I'd believe." And he said, "Yeah, I think you're right." So you have to learn to say what to say, when to say. But the most important thing was you couldn't bluff. You have to do your homework, do your research. You have to find out about players, have an opinion, but be able to back that opinion up. And most of that ESPN at the time, they had people who did their work, because the backup team of John Dykes, Andy Tate, they really, a fellow called Dave Roberts as well, Andy Lessie, they did their work, and they would guide you through. But it was enjoyable. I've got to be honest. I see some of the ones in England now, and I think the ESPN lads in Asia were better. Some English fellas on here and English, some are great, obviously, but others are just there because they played 600 games or somebody.
Who are the ones that you see now in England that you feel they're great, and those that you feel now not
Well,
doing it for you?
in terms of the Emma Hayes as a female is very good. When she speaks, she's very good. Alan Shearer is good. The best two I find are Graham Souness and a fellow called Pat Nevin. They are excellent, opinionated, but backed up by research. You get others who just want to go on. I don't like ever criticizing people in public because it's not an easy job, but you get others who go on. Roy Keane is very funny. He's brutal. He slaughters people, and that's what the average person watches. But others sometimes just think everything's critical and like, oh, we did this, and I was a player, we did that. And you get like Souness doesn't do that, and Pat Nevin. They to me are the good ones. And you see how good some of these hosts are, who allow the pundits to speak, how they bring them in. Very clever. Not easy job. That's the very difficult job. Being the host is not easy.
All right. Okay. So thanks a lot, Steve, for sharing all your thoughts, your journey actually from England.
Well,
from
hopefully back in Asia soon. I came back from Asia after Laos because my daughter was going to university and she had to prepare. She's now in university, so she's fine. And I came to look after my mum, who was struggling. She's now passed away. So in essence, I'm now free. Reality of life, mate. Happens to us all. But I'm now, in a sense, free. So I'm hoping at some stage to go back to Asia. Don't mind where. It's not a money issue anymore. It's a case of, will I enjoy going to work every day? Because that now is the important thing. Can I do a good job? Can I enjoy being a coach? And if I do enjoy it, you hope you do a good job.
Yeah, well, we'll hopefully you can come back, even if it's not for work, just for leisure, to meet up for your former players.
Yeah, I mean, only place it wouldn't be for holiday is Singapore because I'm not rich enough yet.
Oh yeah,
I have to go to Johor.
You could go to Johor.
Yeah, go to
Get
Johor.
the players to come over.
Yeah, I mean, when I first went to Johor, I was on a visitor's visa, and I used to have to go across to Singapore, get my stamp, and come back. I once went, got my stamp in Singapore, and I used to walk back. So I came back. The Johor guy said, "Oh, coach, it's you. Oh, come in. You don't need the stamp. Don't worry about that. We'll let you through." I go, "No, I want to be stamped. I've got to have it. My visa." But Singapore, that would never happen. You had to be stamped. But just that quick walk back. Hey, come on, coach, in you come. Are we going to win the weekend? Why did you play him?
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yes,
that's what it's like being a coach. You get everybody is a coach. It's a reality. Like you go to the dentist, and the bloke who's hammering you in your mouth tells you what you do, and he's the one you don't argue with because he could kill you. So, but everywhere you go, everyone's a coach. And I often say to them, "Who'd you pick? Picking a player is easy. The hardest part being a coach is who'd you drop? Because you've got to go and face that man or woman and say, sorry, you're not playing today, and that's the hardest job in the world." When I was at Sheffield Wednesday, I had to release young players. Heartbreaking, seeing them break down, and you do make mistakes. I released Jamie Vardy.
Oh,
who went on to play for England. So I made that mistake
as well.
Yeah, so you can't. I tell kids now, whenever I speak to kids, don't give in, because one person's opinion might not be right. You might not be right at 14, but you might change your body at 16. You suddenly grow, and these things happen. So Tim Cahill, I didn't choose Tim Cahill in Sydney Olympic when he was 14, but he blossomed at 16. Then went to play in England for Millwall and Everton, etc. So you can make mistakes, and you do. You're human. That's the reality. So no coach gets it right all the time. Some coaches get it right more than others. They're the good ones.
All right. Thanks a lot, Steve, for taking the time to speak to us. Just one final word. Who would you like us to interview next?
Adil, try him because how did
Ideal.
he get from how did he get from being the quietest player in the team to a top class coach? I'd
Okay.
like to see that journey.
All right. Sure. We'll put him in the queue list.
Yeah, yeah.
So yes, I would of course need your help to link us up, but yeah, we'll certainly have him in the queue list.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I know he's coaching now in for Kuching as well. So they're
Coaching. Yeah.
in the midst of a season. So probably during off season would be a good time to catch up with him.
Because his family's still based in Singapore. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So will you send me this link when you can?
Yeah,
And
for
I'll
sure,
share it
for
on.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll send it on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, stuff like that.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for
Okay.
sharing. All right.
Anytime, mate.
Cheers.
Great.
Cheers.
Thanks for your interview. Bye bye. Thank
Welcome.
you.